Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. We're doing a special broadcast today where we're going to have the Iceman himself, John Scully, joining us. Now, for those of you who follow Mac and Jack Sports, you know we've had Iceman John Scully on quite a bit. He comes in and gives us analysis and his opinion on things, but we really never interviewed him, Jack. So I thought it would be great because of the career he has and the work he does in boxing all the way up to today, to bring him in and actually interview him. And you know, I've known John. He's backstage right now, so I'm running my mouth while he's sitting there waiting, but he's going to wait a second. I've known John for a long, long time. In fact, we've actually met briefly a couple times. I don't even know if he remembers me, but we have met a couple times at a mutual person's house who he's very close with and happens to be related to me. And it was a long time ago. And John comes from the same area I come from. Growing up, I watched him, his career. I was in the military when he really came into his own. And I would follow him and Marlon Starling. Those were my two favorite fighters from this area. And they were really good at what they did. And they really put Connecticut on the map at that time as far as boxing went. And like I said, we've had him on before, but we're going to bring him on now and talk about the Iceman's career from everything to when he started all the way to today. And we're going to try and keep it moving along. And hopefully John, who loves to talk, won't get too long-winded on me. But I still want his thoughts. I still want everything that makes the Iceman tick from the beginning to the end. So get ready, John. We're bringing you on. So here he comes, the Iceman, John Scully himself. How you doing today, John?
I got COVID.
COVID. I think we all got COVID, John. I think everybody in the world right now. COVID.
But literally 30 seconds ago, out of nowhere, my throat started going crazy.
Yeah.
Like just as I'm about to come out in the air, my throat goes crazy. So I got some water here.
All right, cool. But, I think you sure it's not because you're coming on with Mac and Jack? Because,
I think it's like before a fight. I agree with you, Mac. I hear rumors only that John used to maybe throw up before fights the way Muhammad Ali claimed he did. Nerves. Yeah. I think he's nervous coming on with us. It's like he's back in his fighting days. Same thing.
Yes, that's what it is.
Mac and Jack.
That's what it is.
You got me.
So, John, let's get to it. I want to go back to your early days, right? You started boxing when you were really young. And the first real gym you went to and your first trainer, I mean, the most significant trainer that you started with. I want to hear a little bit about that. When you started back amateur, I think it was 1985, if I'm not mistaken. When you started boxing amateur, go ahead.
Well, my first time boxing was 1980. And that was in my town. I had my own boxing league, and my town is Windsor. So we had a championship. We called it the WBC, the Windsor Boxing Council. And I was 9-0. I fought a bunch of kids from Windsor, beat all of them. And but it was 1982 when I went to an actual real gym. That was in Windsor Locks. It's funny. I was just there yesterday. I was passing by and I took a picture. It was in Windsor Locks, and that's where I started boxing officially in March of '82.
And I bet that was on Union Street, John, if I'm not mistaken. And Union Street in Windsor Locks, which is
it's where the town hall is.
Right now. In fact, I went to school there, John. That's how close we are, but believe it or not. When I was younger, I went to Windsor and Windsor Locks. But anyway, so you're starting boxing officially. Who was the most significant trainer? I mean, you've trained and you're still training fighters. Who was the guy that really took you to that as a young guy who took you to that next level of actually, the technical aspects of boxing?
Well, I had two trainers that I give the credit to. One was my first trainer that first day, Joe Burrill. He's from Windsor Locks. You might know his son is got a realty company right down the street, Burrill Realty. Yep. the thing is, I always tell people, and they find, they're amazed at this, but it's like the butterfly effect, right? Now, Mr. Brill was big on boxing and moving and getting out of the way. He didn't want guys to stand there and slug it out. So he wanted everyone to be like Muhammad Ali or a young Cassius Clay, get on your toes and move. So I had already been inclined to do that because I was a big Muhammad Ali fan. I truly believe 100%, if I didn't start boxing with Mr. Brill and I started with someone else, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. You would not know my name. You would have never heard of me. He instilled in me the boxing, and I'll tell you a funny story about him. The best example you could ever imagine. Now they have novice and open class division. Back then in the Junior Olympics, they didn't have novice. So if you had no fights, you could fight a guy with 100 fights. It didn't matter. You were all in the same class. So I had one exhibition fight, and then I went to the regional tournament. I won the state tournament by walkover. So I had essentially no fights when I went to the region. I won my first fight ever on May 29, 1983. I beat a kid who was green like me, and I stopped him. So that put me in the finals of the regionals. I fought a killer by the name of William Moore. William Moore at that time was sparring with Mark Breland when Mark Breland was still a year away from the Olympic gold medal. Mark was already world amateur champion. William Moore used to spar with him. I had one fight the day before we fought, so we had to fight each other. So I had seen him devastate people the whole week. He was just, and I remember one thing about him. He had a long trench coat on, and he wore sunglasses indoors, and he just reminded me of Mr. T from the movie Rocky 3, right? So that's who I'm fighting. I have one fight. I went the distance. He didn't touch me. He didn't touch me. I didn't touch him either, but he didn't touch me. I got on my toes. I boxed him. He couldn't touch me. He was so mad. After the fight, he went in the dressing room and he was punching the lockers with his bare hands, denting the lockers. And I asked the guy, I said, man, what's wrong with him? They said, oh, man, he's mad because he couldn't knock you out. He wanted to kill you. And you ran and boxed him. So my point is, even as a literal pure novice, I had the ability from Mr. Brill to box and move and make miss. And I went the distance with this killing machine. So if I didn't have Mr. Brill and I boxed William Moore under somebody else's tutelage, I would have got stopped, almost assuredly. And so Mr. Brill actually set my career in motion.
Well, you said there was two trainers. Who was the second one that you?
Okay, now the second one, Mr. Brill and I parted ways in 1986 because he wanted me to turn pro, and I knew I wasn't ready. I had never even been to a national tournament before, and I had all these things I wanted to do as a boxer. I didn't want to go pro. He came from the Depression era. He thought $400 for a pro fight was great. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I got to make some money. Man, I was 18 years old, but I knew that was no money. So him and I parted ways. I bounced around for a while, and then I ended up in a gym in Springfield with a guy named John Tynan. John Tynan, who I just saw a couple months ago. We had lunch together. He wasn't like a super technical guy, but we had a connection. He believed in me. He was very high on me. He trained me very hard, and he gave me a very, very strong mentality. And he brought me through. I won the Ohio State Fair. I won the PAL Nationals. I went to the National Golden Glove Finals twice. I beat Otis Grant. I beat Darren Allen. I beat all these guys under his tutelage. So those two guys, I think, were my ideal best trainers.
You know, your amateur coach, I mean, the way you said he decided to move on from you, it seems like he decided to move on from you rather than it be a mutual understanding.
No, he wanted me to go pro.
But he didn't want to.
Right. And I said, so I left. I left because I said, man, like, I don't understand the mentality, you know, like, cause I'll never forget what he said. He goes, you know, right now you're fighting for free, but if you turn pro, all you do is one more round and you get $400. Because back then it was $100 a round, and I'm like, $400. That doesn't sound very appealing to me, But that was the going rate for club shows in New England, $100 a round. So I said, well, I'm not on that level yet. I don't need $400. so I moved and I went to a gym in Hartford and just went on my own way.
So now in 1987 in Western Mass, 1988 in Eastern Olympics tournaments, and you were named outstanding boxer. You got outstanding boxing awards in both those tournaments, John. So
yes,
from 86 to 87 and 88, I mean, how excited were you getting? I mean, here you are, you're starting to get recognition. You're fighting in regionals. You're getting ready to go to the Golden Gloves. I mean, you've got to be pumped. Are you tempted then at all to go pro?
No, I never wanted to go pro. I wanted to stay amateur for like 20 years. And I wanted to be the first guy to win the Golden Gloves like 15 times. Most guys, the most they ever won the Golden Gloves where I'm from is like 6. I think Herbie Darity or Stevie Hilliard, they won it like 6 times. I won it 4. And in my mind, I wanted to win it 10 times. And I wanted to go on all the international trips and all those things. But what happened was I was seeing all these guys who I was beating, and they were all going pro. And for most guys after the Olympic trials, that was the next step. But the big thing was there was a trainer by the name of Johnny Duke who was coming to my job. I was working at Kmart at the time. He used to come to my job every weekend. He would come by my house and just beat the horn and trying to sell me on turning pro with Mac Buckley as my promoter. And so they had a plan. Mac had actually came to the Eastern Olympic trials. He came to the National Golden Gloves. He came to the Olympic trials in California. So he was heavily recruiting me. So I kind of just, after I won the Eastern Olympic trials and then went to the Olympic trials, and everybody just kind of made up my mind for me. All the articles in the paper were about me turning pro. So I just kind of like got maneuvered into it, kind of.
John, a lot of fighters turn pro. They get a manager who pays their living expenses, basically their rent, their food, and they find that appealing. Were you in the type of situation where you needed financial assistance where it could have made a major difference? Because some of the fighters are poor and they'll turn pro immediately if they see any type of dollar sign, because it'll at least sustain them for the time being. Then if they get to world championship status, it goes a step further.
Right. I'll be completely honest with you. And I'm probably the only professional fighter maybe in history who can honestly say this. I never turned pro with money in my mind. It never crossed my mind. Like when I got the fight with Michael Nunn and they told me, all right, you can fight Michael Nunn. I'm like, all right, yeah, let's do it. I didn't even ask how much I was getting paid. It didn't even occur to me to ask what the purse was because I just wanted to fight Michael Nunn. Luckily, when I turned pro, I had that. My manager took care of all my expenses. He paid me a weekly paycheck. I bought a car he gave me a signing bonus. I bought a Trans Am, believe it or not. So I had a very good situation. I was hooked up. A lot of guys aren't that fortunate, but it's just funny because I can honestly say I never turned pro for the money. It was never a factor.
So when you do turn pro, I think I got it down in 1988.
Yep.
You as you said, you fought 2-time world champion Michael Nunn. You lost 12-round split decision. It's not like he beat you like stopped you. Yeah, I mean, you fought him to that. Henry Maskey, the 10-round decision for the WBC International Championship.
No. Henry Maskey was for the IBF World title.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So for there, you actually went to where he boxed, his home place, to fight him. Isn't that right?
In Germany, yes.
I just
Yeah.
want to say something about that fight and Henry Mosk in general. Mickey Duff, the legendary British promoter, said if any of his fighters ever fought Henry Mosk, he's the only fighter he ever came across. He'd have no clue what to tell them how to fight Henry Mosk. No
right.
Henry Mosk should be in the Hall of Fame. I'm confident he will. He lost one fight in his career against Virgil Hill. He beat him 10 years later, Olympic gold medalist, great fighter. He's one of the fighters, even though he fought and had home cooking in Germany, he really did win his fights. They were in hometown decisions, unlike, someone like maybe that's Swen Aki, some of his decisions were questionable. Henry Mosk's decisions were questionable. Truly great fighter. He was a spoiler. He had a terrible style to fight against, a shutdown type style. John, you tell us about it.
Well, I'll tell you on that end, you're right. He had a nightmare of a style. And the guy was 6'4", I saw him spar Axel Schultz in the gym. And Axel couldn't even reach him,
Axel lost a disputed decision to George Foreman when they fought the 12th round.
Axel Schultz is the top heavyweight, and he couldn't reach Henry, But the funny thing was, going into the fight, the thing that Henry had that made him, one thing that really elevated him was he grew up. He was an upper echelon, he was like a high class type of guy. He always wore a suit, and so he wasn't a street guy by any stretch. He wasn't that type of guy. So, like for example, when I fought Michael Nunn, we got into it verbally, and I could get Michael Nunn, even though Michael Nunn was a beautiful boxer, I could get him to fight with me because he had that pride, that street level to him. Henry wasn't going for that, like at all. So before the fight, we said, listen, referee, this guy holds. Like Henry will push your head down with his right hand just repeatedly, and the referees never do anything. So we complained about it before the fight. I said, look, he's trying to stop me from fighting on the inside. You got to let me work. Well, he did it. I think they counted after the fight like 17 times he got warned by the ref to not push my head down. And but they never took a point away. Now, so by the end of the fight, in the last round, he pulled my head down. I'm trying to get inside and work, but he's not going for it. So he pushes my head down. So at this point, I have nothing to lose. So I had my head down, and I saw his foot like right below me. So I stomped on his foot with my foot. The referee separated us and gave me a warning. And I said, and I laughed, and I literally tapped him on the shoulder, and I go, it was Stanley Christodoulou. And I tapped him on the shoulder, and I go, I know, I got you. I mean, we got a minute left. You want to warn me for this? This guy's been pushing my head down for the last hour, and you want to warn me. So by that point, I knew where we were headed, and, that was it.
Well, Iceman,
Stanley Christodoulou's in the Hall of Fame.
That's great. Hey, Iceman, the thing that I liked about the way you boxed, I mean, amateur, I think you were 35 or 38 and 11 or 35 and 13.
No, that was pro.
Right. Well, you were pro. You were 38 and 11. I think you were.
I had 57 wins as an amateur.
57 and 13. It looks like a 3 over here I wrote. So it's 57 and 13 as an amateur. Another 38 and 11 as a pro. And when I watched you fight, what was really cool about watching you, John, is that you weren't really a dancer. You weren't really a brawler. You were more of a counter puncher, take angles, work the body, come off their punches, and then you put the punches together when you had a chance. It always looked like you were pressuring the guy without pushing him. You were just always around the guy, moving around him, and they were always trying to hit you. And the technique you had there is it was a counter punching a worker that if the guy took a break or missed with his punch, you jumped all over him. And that was to me a great style, and it worked against a lot of boxers from what I watched, John.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was an amateur, when I was a beginning amateur, I was known as a runner. I was a runner. I would move and box and literally in my first 30 fights, I very rarely got hit at all. And I always remember my father telling me, we were at the I was fighting in the Golden Gloves, and I was walking to the ring, and there was a group of guys there. They didn't know who my father was. And one of them said, that Scully kid, he's fighting. He goes, he's always winning, but I hate watching him fight. He's always moving around, and he doesn't bang it out. So I did that for a long time because, to be honest, I didn't know if I could take a punch. I didn't know if I was tough, and I didn't want to find out necessarily. So it wasn't until I fought a guy, and Jack, you might remember Ricky Thomas. I fought Ricky Thomas out of Albany. He fought Darren Van Horn on USA Tuesday Night Fights. He fought James Toney. I fought Ricky Thomas, and Ricky had won the National Police PAL title the year before. Really tough guy, and that was the first fight where I settled down and banged with a guy a little bit and was successful. And I beat Ricky, and from that point on, I kind of morphed into more of an aggressive fighter until the point got to be where some of my biggest wins, especially as an amateur, came from literally being all out aggressive, like animalistic. I used to think of Jeff Fennick when Jeff Fennick was just a beast, like he would just be on you. And I remember hearing a guy say one time, he was describing his fight at the Nationals, and he was like, just the way he said it, he goes, I was on him, man. I was on him all 3 rounds. And I just liked the way it sounded. So I beat a lot of guys as an amateur early on as a boxer. Later on, I beat guys because I was relentless and I wouldn't let them rest. I never held. You've never seen a video of me as an amateur hold anyone. If they tried to hold me, I would push them off and just keep punching.
Well, your style wasn't as good for amateur boxing as it was for the pro ranks. And you were better suited for the pro ranks.
The thing is, right, well, here's the funny thing. I was very successful as an amateur, and I beat the number 1 and the number 2 in the world rankings in the amateurs. But you remember Mike Katz from New York Daily News?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I still have the article where after the Olympic trials, he wrote a big story about, people who stood out. And he talked about Bo, he talked about Kelsey Banks, he talked about Ray Mercer, and he talked about me. And in it, he said, Connecticut attorney Mac Buckley looks to have a good one in the brawling John Scully, whose style is probably similar. He compared me to Aaron Pryor, and he said, who's probably, compared to Aaron Pryor, is better suited for the pros. So, yeah, at that point, I was on seek and destroy. So, yeah, pro was probably better.
Mac, what impresses me most about John's career, different people are going to be impressed by different things. This is me personally. 49 fights, only got stopped once. That means on 48 of the 49 fights, he either won or went the distance.
Yeah,
okay?
I mean, even
that impresses me. But John, like Rocky Marciano, who retired after 49 fights, you're such a meticulous guy who thinks things out. I know it had to cross your mind. Why didn't I get the 50th fight? It sounds like a good number. Like Vinny Paz did that.
No, listen.
Putting a bow, it's like a package, putting a little bow on it.
I got news for you. That was the plan. That was the plan. My plan was to get 40 wins. But I'll tell you this, I told this story just 2 hours ago to somebody. I won't tell the whole thing. It's too long, but just to be clear, when I got stopped the one time, that was by Drake Dazzy. I'll give you an example of where my mind was at. I spent the entire 2 hours before the fight in the hotel by myself in my hotel room trying to think of a reason not to go home. I wanted to go home. I had my bags packed and everything. I was gonna leave and go home and not go to the fight. I was gonna not show up, and I wasn't gonna tell them I was coming. I knew I was gonna lose. I knew, long story short, I was sparring with Charles Brewer before the fight. He broke a blood vessel in my nose that I bled for over 48 hours straight. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't think you could bleed that long. And I'm like, I finally went to the emergency room. Now, this is 10 days before the fight. They put a stick up my nose with wrapped in gauze and some kind of medication. They put it up in my nose. They pulled the stick out and left the gauze there. And they left it there until like 2 days before the fight when I drove to where was the fight? Boston. When I drove to Boston. So I went into that fight having to lose 9.5 pounds the last night with this thing stuck in my nose. So I didn't want to fight. Like I was, do you remember, I don't know if you remember this, but when Ali fought Larry Holmes, somebody, it might have been Mike Katz, somebody said it was like they performed an autopsy on a living person. That's what they said about Larry Holmes and Ali. That's what I felt like when I fought Drake Dazzy. I should never have been in that ring. It was by far the worst day of my life. Horrible. So I try not to even consider that fight because just what I had to go through was just inhuman. And I don't know if you remember this, but I've never seen it on tape, but I actually, in the ring after the fight, I was so upset and mad. One, that they stopped it, because I could have went 12 rounds like easily. I could have done 20 rounds like that. But I was so miserable, and I think it was Al Bernstein was in the ring, and I said, listen, I quit. I'm sick of boxing. I hate boxing. I quit. And he goes, are you saying you retire? And I'm saying, no, I quit. I'm not retiring. I quit. I hate boxing. And I literally hated it. And I was so relieved to say it. I just didn't ever wanted to box again for my whole life. I didn't even want to be in a gym. That's how much I hated it going into that fight. So that's my story for that fight.
well, let's close out the boxing and get to your training. Next, I mean, you sparred with Henry Maskey. We talked about Vinny Paziana, James Toney, Roy Jones Jr. I mean, you sparred, not only fought against big guys, you were their sparring partners, which when you're going to go fight a big fight, you want the best available fighter to get ready. So, I mean, you did come back and beat a middleweight. In the middleweight, you fought well. Light heavyweight, you were fighting. You were a ranked contender, getting your shot at the titles. So you had a pretty successful career as a boxer. Even not even counting Maskey, who you went the distance with him anyway.
Tough guys he fought on the way up. I have to add in like Tim Littles and Tony Thornton, world-class guys. I mean, he actually fought, didn't spar with.
Right. I mean, just all around. So you become a trainer, Jeff. What made you decide to start training boxers?
I was training boxers since I was 18 years old. I'll give you an example. When I fought Michael Nunn, that was December of 1995. 3 or 4 weeks later, the beginning of January 1996, I slept on the floor in a motel room in Lake Placid, New York, at the regional junior Olympic tournament. I had like 3 kids in the tournament up there. I was training amateurs the whole time. The whole time I was boxing pro, I was already training guys. So transitioning to a professional trainer was not a question. It was a simple transition.
But so you train, from what I counted, 4 champions. Women's IBF, Liz Mueller, the WBA junior middleweight champ Jose Rivera, IBO super bantamweight champion Mike Oliver, and got together and trained WBC light heavyweight champion Chad Dawson. So when you're finding success as a trainer, I mean, you're still involved in boxing, which even though you hated it at that moment, at that last fight, you still love the sport. You love to give your knowledge. You love to help bring people along. But what you did was unique, John. You've been on the show before, and you said there was really no contract signed. It was more or less a handshake. We're together. We're doing this. Can you explain that to some of the people?
You know, I'm I'm the type of guy. I guess I'm a little different. Like I'm the type. You see guys go to court. Over the contract. I don't even want to. I don't want to get dressed up in a suit. I don't want to go. Like I literally would wake up that day and go, I'm just not gonna go. I don't want to go. So if we're not gonna train together, it would be like being married. I don't want to have to go to court talk about it. Like if we're not gonna be together, don't be together. Just leave. I leave, you leave, we're both gone. So I never needed a contract because if I want to leave, I'm leaving, and I don't care what the paper says. So I've never had a contract as a trainer ever in my life, and I doubt I ever will.
Well, there's a controversy with professional trainers, how much they should get paid. Historically, it's been 10%, but that started to change around the Sugar Ray Leonard time. If a trainer's been with a fighter since it's the amateurs, from the very beginning to when he's turned pro, he should reap the benefits of it without a doubt. But in this day and age, you have these hired guns. A trainer could be with a fighter all these years. The fighter has one subpar performance and he moves on to someone else. And right. I have mixed feelings. It's his career. It's his one career. He's entitled to move on, but you also want him to show a sense of loyalty. You want him to balance out what's best for his career, because a trainer can train other fighters. But if a guy's been with you from the beginning, I like what Kevin Kelly did years ago. His career hit a slump. He kept his trainer, Phil Borgia, from the amateurs and brought in someone else. So this way he kind of worked it out. But that's oftentimes not the case.
Right. I think one thing I think about the trainer situation, people have to realize, like, sometimes fighters get a bad rap. Like they'll break with a guy and people say, oh, he brought you up since you were a kid and, you're not loyal. I say, well, listen, man, it's like a relationship. Sometimes it doesn't work anymore. Like you can't stay with someone just because he took you on trips when you were a kid and paid your way, to the nationals. He did it for himself as well. He was investing in something and hoping it would pan out. And that's again why I don't bother with contracts. If it doesn't work, I'll know. We'll know. And you touched on something earlier where, a trainer wants to train other people. He's got other clients. Now that's why I'll give an example. When Chad Dawson and I were together, big fights, good money for me and him. And we never had a contract and never even entered my mind. I'll tell you, so when we broke up after the Andre Ward fight, I had to, without going into all the details, but at one point after the fight, like the strength coach said, we win and lose as a team. Now, I went on record as saying, no, we're not losing, not this time. Because I was very against him going down in weight. And once I saw what was happening within the camp, not publicly, but within the camp, I was very vocal about this. And I, at one point, a few weeks before the fight, I said, listen, if it's going to take this, then let's cancel the fight. Don't fight. Let's go home. I knew what was coming. I knew it was coming. So the reason I spoke out is because I didn't want people to think that was my work. The way Chad looked in that fight. And I told the guy who I felt was responsible, I told him a few weeks before the fight, I said, listen, what you're doing right now is not going to work. And the problem is nobody knows who you are. I'm the head trainer. So if he wins, everybody's going to say I did a great job. But if he loses, everything's on me and you're going to go back home and nobody's going to know who you are still. So you're messing with my career now, doing these experiments. So I felt the need as a business person to say, all right, make sure people don't think that this was my work, because I'll never get another job again if they think I did that. So that's where the business of boxing sometimes has to come into play. You have
John, but the fighter has to step in and make it clear who's his head trainer, who he's taking direction from. If he allows the chaos to go on, it's not going to get resolved in most cases.
Right, but we're talking, like I was the trainer, but as far as losing weight and making weight and all that, and how he did that, that wasn't me. That wasn't left up to me. So my point is, the way he made weight was horrific. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, what he did to do it. But again, at the end, it's always going to reflect on the trainer. You know, when Emmanuel Stewart trained Tommy Hearns, nobody saw people behind the scenes doing stuff with Tommy in the gym. Everything reflected on Emmanuel. So if Tommy won, Emmanuel was a hero. If Tommy lost, Emmanuel was not as good of a trainer as we thought. So
well, I noticed with Chad Dawson, while you were training and while you were the head trainer, at one point Floyd Mayweather Jr. said, outside of himself, Chad Dawson is the best fighter pound for pound in the world.
Right.
So
he was. He was on his game. He was sharp. And when he went to and that's my point. When he went to 168, the manner in which he had to make it caused him to he's never recovered. I mean, think about it. He's never recovered from that the same way Roy Jones never recovered from coming down in weight after the Ruiz fight. So I felt like I had to make sure, because one guy who was gonna maybe come and train with me, he actually called me after, like a couple days after the fight, and he was like, man, what was that all about? So we never trained together. He chose not to train with me based on that. And I'm like, man, these people, it's just like I said it was going to be. They think I did this. I caused him to look like that. So as a person looking to stay in this game, I have to make sure people understand that had nothing to do with me. So that's where the business rears its head sometimes. And I don't like to get into business, but in that particular instance, I felt it was necessary.
Definitely got to look out for yourself no matter what.
Yeah.
John, if people don't know, Iceman is one of the trainers for Arthur Betterbeeve, the light Betterbeeve. Thank you. The recognized light heavyweight champion of the world. There's a few that hold belts.
According to Mac, the second best light heavyweight in the world.
Let's not get into that. We're interviewing.
Listen, let's be clear on one thing. All jokes aside, there's not a prayer your guy goes the distance. Forget about winning. Well, there's not a prayer that he goes the distance. There's no chance.
We'll get to that at the end, because we will get to who might be fighting coming up soon. But so people don't know this, may not know this either. John has been writing for Boxing News for years. He was featured on some big boxing shows as he was an analyst before and after fights. So, I mean, we're talking about a guy that not just boxed and just trained. I mean, he's been in all facets of boxing. As I said, he wrote for Boxing News. He was commenting on Floyd Mayweather, Shane Mosley, Manny Pacquiao, Miguel Cotto. I mean, he's been around boxing his whole life, even though he says he hates it sometimes. I know that's a love-hate relationship he has with it. So what do you enjoy more doing, John? Do you enjoy more like coming on to air, analyzing fights, or the actual writing that you do, say, for Boxing News or somewhere else?
All of it in a certain way. All of it is irreplaceable. But the fact is, and anyone will tell you this that's boxed, like nothing can replace being the fighter. There's nothing that compares to being that guy. I've been a lot of the guys, but that guy is the guy. And it is what it is. People come ultimately when they pay $1,000 or $500 or whatever it is to go to a fight, they come to see the fighters, period. They don't come to see the trainer, the cut man, the referee. They don't come to see anybody but the fighter. And, so he's the guy. And so there's nothing I've ever done that could compare. Now, with that said, being a trainer, in specific instances, I've done some things as an amateur and a pro coach that that rivaled that was on on a similar level because of specifics. Like I had a kid. I'll give you an example. I had a kid, Dwayne Hairston, who I just talked to 2 days ago. He's 30, what is he, 30, 37, 38 years old now. Dwayne, when he was a little kid, he grew up in the projects, and I used to hang out with him. He was like 8 years old, and we used to go hang out. We'd box in my den and, do everything together. And I always told him, I'm going to take you to Disney World. We're going to get to Disney World. You're going to meet Mickey Mouse one day, and Mickey Mouse was our big thing. He's got to meet Mickey Mouse. So we trained, and like 5 years later, he was 13 years old, and he went to the National PAO tournament at Disney World. And not only did he meet Mickey Mouse that week, but he also got backstage. He sneaked backstage and saw all the people getting dressed into their costumes. But he also won the PAL tournament. And Jack, if you know Anthony Peterson, Lamont Peterson's brother, Dwayne beat Anthony Peterson in the finals in what was easily one of the top 3 best fights of that whole tournament, like a all-out just war. So for me, getting Dwayne to Disney World and winning that tournament because of our history together was literally just as big as beating Hopkins with Chad.
Yeah, I mean, I believe me, I understand what you're saying when it comes to coaching. You can get a lot of satisfaction.
I was at that fight in Atlantic City when Dawson beat Hopkins. The first fight kind of ended controversial.
Yeah, the first one in Los Angeles. Yeah,
Dawson would have won that fight. I always thought Hopkins was maybe looking for a little way out, but then he did fight him again, so who knows?
Yeah, I mean, as you're saying, John, I played football and I coach football, and playing the game, of course, there's nothing like it. As I imagine, the boxing is the same way, but the coaching sometimes get really close, especially when you have a special kid or whatever. And I've experienced that too, and watch him grow and have an investment in them. It almost comes like you're out there again. It's pretty close. It may not be the same.
But you want to know something? We kid Mac and myself sometimes, John, about the Rocky Balboa series of fights. But it is realistic, the thing that happened with Tommy Gunn, to an extent, the way the fighter gets to a certain point and leaves the trainer. Even though it was fictional, there was some reality there.
Oh, yeah, it happens every day. Yeah, for sure. I've seen it many times. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, of course. Mike Tyson was one of them. John, let's talk a little bit about Better Bive, Arter. Had a good win. He's still undefeated, and you got really 3 main opponents out there. And first, talk a little bit about the fight with Better Bive. I don't want to take nothing away from him.
Against Marcus Brown, his last fight. Very good. By the way, Marcus Brown, excellent fighter, an Olympian, United States Olympian, and he was a threat to Better Beef. This wasn't a walkover. Better Beef had to be on top of his game because there was no guarantees he'd win if he was going to have an off night.
And if I remember correctly, he stopped him in the 6th round. Is that right, John?
I think it might have been the 9th. I
think it was the 9th. As I remember. He started turning it around after a few rounds. Marcus Brown got off to a good start, but Better Beef was relentless in this fight.
Yeah. That's well, it's funny. Just like with the fight with Gavadzik a few years ago, even though Arthur started out slower, taking his time, and Brown was sharp, at no time was I worried, and I don't think any of us were, like, at all. Because as I've said many times, 12 rounds is a long time to be in a ring with Arthur Beterbiev. It is a long time. He makes that ring like a pressure cooker, like a vice grip. And, the longer you're in, the worse it is psychologically, just horrible. And so I really had no worries, even though maybe after the 3rd round, we probably were behind on the scorecards, but I still wasn't worried.
Well, Eddie Hearn came out with a proposal what he wants Canelo Alvarez to do. Even though Canelo technically is a free agent, he likes Eddie Hearn a lot. It seems like he's fighting for him. At the moment, at least, He wants him to beat the 3 guys who hold belts in the light heavyweight division. He says, first you fight Dimitri Bivol, you beat him. Then you fight Joe Smith, you beat him. Then you fight Artur Beterbiev, you beat him. But what's interesting, there's no way he'd say fight Artur Beterbiev first. So I'm sure the plan is let Artur Beterbiev get older, let some of the skills decline. He is 37, I think. So is there a sense of urgency to have that fight? Because if it takes place in a couple of years, it doesn't work in Artur Beterbiev's favor, I don't think.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like, you see the strategy, of these guys, the Mayweather strategy, the Canelo strategy. Obviously they want to wait. I mean, I don't care what anyone says. What people say doesn't mean anything, because people always have a motive for saying certain things. Especially in sports, most of what comes out of, especially promoters and fighters' mouths, are lies. Like, they're literally lying all the time. Just, they have to tell you what they think you want to hear. And, or to give you an idea in your head. They want to plant the seed in your head. But I know it's not rocket science to realize they want Arthur to get older. And I'm sure they can say what they want. I don't think Canelo was super, super excited about fighting Arthur after seeing what he came through in that fight with Marcus. He dealt with the speed, he dealt with the movement, he dealt with the size, he dealt with the horrific cut, and looked like a machine. Literally looked like a machine. Literally didn't let it affect him in the slightest. If anything, it just made him better.
Well, I've watched a lot of video on Beterbiev. He is a machine. The man is an incredible hard punching fighter that you either got to knock out early, or you better have some good wheels, because he is a pressure fighter. So you've got 3 opponents, and hopefully this gets done soon, John. You got 3 opponents that Beterbiev would have to either beat for his legacy, because he's light heavyweight division has become a lot more interesting the last year or so. You got Canelo, who is a big payday. He's a big star, and Beterbiev fights him. I mean, the purse is going to be huge. You got Bivol, who is a technically sound fighter. I don't know how much trouble he would give Beterbiev, but it would be a good fight, I think, at least for a while. And then you got the slugger and the pressure guy, who is Joe Smith Jr., that has a lot of heart. Now, I know you say that he wouldn't have a chance. I disagree with you. I think if he got Beterbiev early, he has a chance. I don't think he could go 10 rounds with Beterbiev. There ain't no way. But he's got a lot of heart. He's got a big punch. He's got as much power almost as Beterbiev. And if he catches him, it could be over. But of course, the favorite here to me is your fighter in all 3 of these fights. That would be the favorite. So what can your camp do? I mean, what can the promoters do to make sure these fights happen? I mean, Smith is in the same stable as Beterbiev. So that should be no problem to make. I'm not sure who Bivol is with. Canelo, as Jack said, is a free agent. So when do you think we see a fight amongst these 4 fighters? I think any one of them, of course, would make some money off of, but would be exciting for the light heavyweight division.
Right. I mean, I generally don't even pay attention to the business end of boxing. Like if I saw a headline right now, if I was scrolling through the internet and I saw a headline like, Beterbiev might fight, Joe Smith or something, right? But I wouldn't even read the article. Like, I wouldn't read it, because it's just speculation. And I've seen articles like that over the last few months. So I just wait till they call me and tell me. I've said this. I think Joe Smith is the best fight in terms of anticipation. Like, Joe's going to come really hard. Ultimately, that's his undoing against Arthur. Like, his passion and desire is what would get him knocked out, because he'd bring it. But while it happened, it would be very exciting. He'd bring it. He's super dangerous. Whereas Bivol is the biggest fight in the division, having an impact on the division. But it's not as good of a fight as Smith. Bivol is very smart and tactical, and it would be an important fight, but not the best fight. Canelo is the biggest fight, financially and viewership. So people don't even care that Canelo's not even a light heavyweight. They don't even know that. Most people that pay to watch the fight don't even know Canelo's not a light heavyweight. They have no idea. They know the name, and they pay to watch the name. And
well, they want John, they want the money. Everyone is lined up wanting to fight Canelo.
No, I'm saying fans. I'm saying the average fan.
I understand, but from the business viewpoint, Better Beef really is going to wind up for the time being as one of the most avoided fighters in boxing. He's going to join Demetrius Andrade because it's risk reward. No one wants to fight Andrade. They don't want to fight Terrence Crawford. But if there's money to be made against a guy like Canelo, everyone wants to fight Canelo. Everyone wanted to fight Manny Pacquiao. Everyone wanted to fight Mayweather because it represented a major payday for him.
Right.
But Better Beef doesn't quite provide that right now.
Right. Well, I'm going to tell you what I said. I've said this many times, but I said it right after the fight when, in an interview or whatever. I said, if Canelo doesn't in his heart want to fight Arthur, I don't blame him. He's a great fighter. He's the best fighter pound for pound in the world. He's super, super improved. He's the money guy. He's everything. But if he confided in me and said, I really don't want to fight Arthur, I go, I don't blame you. Like I'm not mad at you. You're not stupid. You know that's a horrible night to go through. Even if you win, you're gonna catch some stuff on the way to victory that you're not gonna like at all. And one thing Arthur has proven, like he's there to fight. He's going to hit you with something, and he doesn't care how long it takes. He's on you, And so again, the division is exciting. It's a good time to be, in that upper echelon at light heavyweight. And as I illustrated, those are the three fights for different reasons that could potentially happen. In terms of which one is next, I honestly have no idea.
I sure hope they make at least one of them. I don't care if Bivol fights Smith Jr. or whatever. Let's get it going. John, you were a light heavyweight contender in your prime. If you were to match up against Bivol, I've done this to you before on the show, Smith Jr., even your own fighter, I mean, what chance do you think, what fighter do you think your style would be best to fight against?
It's funny. I say it in a funny way, but I mean it. Like my best weight was probably 168. Like ideally, that was my weight. Light heavyweight, I was, and like Michael Nunn was much bigger than me, and we fought at 168. Maskey was huge next to me. Rachigiani was huge. Dadsy. People told me when I fought Drake Dadsy, they thought the wrong guy got in the ring. They thought a heavyweight no, really, my friend was like, man, I thought he was a heavyweight. I thought it was the wrong guy, and that they were going to bring him out and bring the right guy. So, guys like Arthur, just he's so big and so strong. I'd probably want to go back to super middleweight, to be honest with you. I wouldn't really want to, you fight who you have to. You know what I mean? If I'm there.
I don't think you would be scared of Better Vibe at all.
I mean, scared may not be the word, but if you have a level of awareness, it's going to be at optimum level when you fight Arthur, rightfully so, and it's got to be the right money, But it's just weird. I couldn't even picture it. Me being, my last fight was 20 years ago. 2001. So the further I get away from my last fight, the further I get away from the mentality of what it would take. So right now, more than any time in my life, I couldn't imagine fighting these guys because I'm so far removed from competition that I can't even picture it. I would need to train for 2 months and to get back into that mentality to even contemplate what it would be like to fight a guy like that.
Yeah, I can understand that. So we're getting close to the end, John. I want to know your biggest disappointment, and that could be in anything, whether it's training, boxing, anywhere in your career, and your biggest personal accomplishment, not on paper, not that what people say is your biggest accomplishment. I want your biggest disappointment in the boxing, in what you've done, and your biggest accomplishment personally.
I would say the Drake Dadsey fight never should have happened. And I always had, it's funny, Muhammad Ali fought Larry Holmes in 1980. So I was 13. And I remember picking up the newspaper that morning, and I couldn't believe he got stopped. Like I said, man, it said Muhammad Ali stopped in the 11th round. And I couldn't wrap my head around Ali not going the distance. Something about it. And I always said, I'm never going to get stopped. No one's going to stop me. I don't care what. And never did, other than that fight with Dadsey. And again, it was the weight. And when they stopped it, the ref, who knew me since I was a kid, he just stopped it. Like, I wasn't punching back. I wasn't getting hit. He even said, he goes, I've known you since you're a kid. I know you weren't right. There's just no sense in letting you, fight. So I that was miserable. I hated it. I hated the way I felt. I hated boxing. I hated everything. I wish I never fought the fight. So that was probably the worst, most disappointing thing. As far as, the best things, the most exciting, winning the Golden Gloves for the first time, 1985, because at that time, that's all I knew about amateur boxing from Sugar Ray Robinson was the Golden Gloves. Sugar Ray Robinson was Golden Glove. I knew Sugar Ray Robinson more as Golden Gloves champion than I did world champion. He was the New York City Golden Glove champion. So I wanted to do that. But there was a guy, Jack, you probably remember Darren Allen. Darren Allen was he fought William Guthrie for the light heavyweight title.
Oh, yeah.
But Darren, as an amateur, was a superstar. He was elite. He was world. He beat Henry Mosky for the world title as an amateur. He went to the Pan American Games. He won everything. He beat 3 Olympic gold medalists in his career. When I fought him in 1988 to go to the Olympic trials, it was by far the most intense I've ever been for a fight. So much so that 25 years later, and I printed it out. I copied it and I printed it out. Darren Allen, I happened to catch it. He didn't tag me in it. He wrote about me on his Facebook page. And he said, and he had no idea how correct he was. And I mean this. He said, he put a picture of me up and he said, this guy was, other than Anthony Hembrick, this was my biggest rival as an amateur. And he goes, this guy fought me like he would rather die than lose to me. And people say that all the time. Like, I would rather die than lose. He had no idea. And I said, listen, you were so accurate. I would have rather died than lose that fight. I was ready to die to win that fight. I wanted to win that fight more than anything ever placed in front of me in my life. I could have quit boxing June 4th, 1988. I could have quit boxing and I would have been fine. So that was my move.
Talk about the amateurs, because fighters to me have 2 different careers. Amateur career, pro career. Maybe that didn't work out in their pro career, but if they had a great amateur career, they've been very, very successful.
Yeah. Oh man, I know guys, for different reasons that they didn't pan out as a pro because of promotion and, different things held them back. But in amateurs where there's no promotion, you just fight whoever it is. There's no negotiation. You're in the Golden Gloves and the best guy in the world is in your weight class and you fight him with no questions asked. That's in a way, that's who you see is really something. Because I fought in 1 week, in less than a week, I fought 3 guys in the top 10 in the amateurs because I had to, because they were my next opponents. You wouldn't see that in the pros. So yeah, I respect guys who are great amateurs, because to be a great amateur, you have to be fearless. You have to fight whatever comes your way, and there's no saying no and relinquishing your title.
Well, John, I lied to you. I got one more thing to go over with you. You're a huge advocate for boxers that kind of are down on their luck now, whether they're medically they can't function by themselves physically, whether they just came on hard times. And this is where you've even got notice. I mean, your career, yes, but the work that you do for these fighters, not only through a nonprofit organization, but personally. I've seen you do it personally. And people that are huge in the boxing industry, Max Kellerman has talked about you. You were even on a show with him, and he told you, we know what you're doing down there. I mean, to me, there is no more of a true person than a person that does something extra for somebody else when he doesn't have to. I mean, you could go along and write and go and do appearances and stuff like that, but you take it to heart. And this is why I know that you're entrenched and always will be in boxing. And that's why I got you down there as a boxing icon. Because what you've done throughout your career is not only for yourself, it's been for other people. And if you could, just a couple of minutes, John, talk about, your advocacy for these boxers.
Well, I right now I'm helping out with a few guys, with Gerald McClellan, Wilfred Benitez, Pritchard Colon, and I was helping out with Donald Curry. And I just want to say something. There's a guy, I don't know if you know who he is, BJ Flores. He trains the guy, the YouTube guy, Jake Paul or his brother. He trains one of them. He came on my Facebook page the other day, and he saw where I was raising money for Donald Curry. And he insulted me. He said, he was very insulting. And he said, why do you're trying to do it for yourself? You got his name out there. Why are you putting his name out there? And why can't you just raise money, without using his name? And I said, well, moron. Number one, I have the go-ahead from his family to do it. B, it's already, I'm not telling a secret. There were stories all over the internet about how he's in dire straits. And C, I'm going to raise money because it's him, because it's Donald Curry. I can't tell the people, hey, just send me money for some guy. I can't tell you who it is. So BJ, I don't know what that dude's thinking, but he tried to put me on blast all over the internet. Well, I'm returning the favor, BJ. Okay, wake up. I'm gonna raise money because people want to send money to somebody they know. They want to send money to a guy they were a fan of. It makes them feel closer. It makes them feel, they appreciate knowing, hey man, I'm helping Donald Curry. But again, I never would tell. I've helped guys that I can't tell you about. I wouldn't tell you about. If it's not common knowledge, I don't tell you. So I want BJ to know I don't help anyone that everybody doesn't already know who they are, and I'm not the one who exposed their situation. I'm just now that it is exposed, I'm helping out. So BJ messed up there. He made a big mistake right there.
Yeah, well, me and Jack talked about before the show. I saw that, and I saw your reply, and the guy's just a jerk. He's an idiot. That's all there is. Very
we
simple.
have time, Mac, for
yes. Well, I did want to talk to him one last thing here, so we could let John get going, and we can get going. But I know there's a big movie coming out called Pep. Mm-hmm. And we had to mention this real quick because John's been did a lot of work. I don't know if he's still doing it or not, with the lead actor in the boxing. He's kind of training an actor to box, and I don't know if he's involved in any scenes or not. I didn't hear about that, but I know you've been training the guy who was playing Willie Pep in the movie Pep. And I don't know if it's done or not, John, but you give a little information about how it was to be on a movie set and working with these guys.
Right. Well, the filming is over. We've already had the wrap and everything. James Madio, who, if you know James Madio, he was in the Basketball Diaries. It was him, Mark Wahlberg, and Leonardo DiCaprio. Those were the three guys. So he's the third guy there. He's in Band of Brothers. He was in the movie Hook. Good actor, super guy. I mean, we became very close quickly. He's just a regular guy. He loved hanging out. We actually sparred. I had him spar once with me just to get a feeling of what it was like to be in a ring. Really good guy. He looks a lot like Willie, especially when he puts on the old time clothes and the hat. You know, he looks like Willie. So I think he's going to do a really good job. They filmed it all over Hartford. You know, they had the old time cars were there, and you know, people see 1960s and 50s cars all over Hartford, and it was pretty exciting. It was pretty good, and there was actors that you've seen, like in the movie, in the show The Wire. There was a guy from The Wire was in it. One guy was in there. He actually was in one of my favorite movies called Manhunter. He died a horrible death in Manhunter. He was there. So you know, it's a good cast as well.
When's it coming out? Any idea?
If I'm not mistaken, it will come out next year. They're gonna, you know, they finished filming and everything, you know, several weeks ago. So now they got to do the you know, editing, and they got to do the press and all that type of stuff. So I would imagine probably at the end of this year or the beginning of next year.
And talk about an incredible pound for pound fighter, Willie Pep. Unbelievable. I can't wait till that movie comes out. John, I want to thank you for coming in today. Like I said, we never really interviewed you. We've got your opinions and analysis sometimes, but a significant man in boxing, folks. You know, he's always working in boxing no matter what. Does a lot of great things there. And John, it's been a pleasure interviewing you for the first time. And man, have a great New Year.
Thank you. You guys too. I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Get well, John.
Yes, sir. Thanks. Thank you very much. All right.
So there you go, Jack. I bring it back up for a second. We had Iceman, and you know the great thing about Iceman is he's a regular guy, right? He doesn't try to be something he's not. He's very straightforward. But man, this dude has done so much in boxing. I know you know him.
We didn't even mention everything, Mac. We ran out of time. He's done so much. I wanted to talk, and it's not your fault. We just didn't have the time. The boxer reunions from the amateurs.
Yeah, I mean,
he organizes reunions of these amateur fighters, and it means so much to them. We didn't even have time to touch upon that. The man does so much.
Unbelievable. So, folks, thank you for tuning in. A local hero, a national hero, and really a hero to a lot of boxers that kind of come on hard times. Does great work, and it was a pleasure having him. And thanks for tuning in as we interviewed the boxing icon himself, Iceman John Scully. Have a great night, everybody.